Hello, this is the lecture for Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. After the completion of several scenes yesterday and the day before from the movie Quest for Fire. Okay. So, as with the Paleozoic era being the longest period of time in the natural history calendar, you should have your notepacks open to from prehistory to pre-classical civilization 1, universal origins. The idea of the Paleolithic age is also by far the longest of those periods in human history because it goes back several tens of thousands of years. In fact, arguably, it goes back to Australopithecus around 3 million years ago. Paleo, old, lithos, stone, old Stone Age, is characterized by our universal origin in savagery. At this point, I stopped going, well, you can believe what you want to believe. I'll believe what I want to believe as regards the origin of man. Yes, there's a 2 there without a 1. I'll be talking about that, maybe. Whether you believe in seventh-day creationism, or whether you believe that we evolved over millions of years on a planet 5 billion years old in a universe just under 15 billion years old, or whether you believe that the vegetable god Boji decided to have a broccoli spore shoot off into space and that became the world as we know it. In fact, it doesn't matter at this point because we're into actual prehistory that is measurable. We start out in a state of utter, absolute savagery. Wilderness living, barbaric practices, viciousness, terror in the night, all that stuff. We start out as savages everywhere on Earth. Crazy, wild savagery. And the patterns of life are very clearly established during the Paleolithic. First off, the great technology invention during the Paleolithic is the mastery of fire, which we've talked a lot about. I'm just going to go down a line of students and ask for advantages of fire, starting with you. Food. We heat food and cook it. So, heat during wintertime.
Protection from animals.
Protection from animals.
Welding of weapons.
Yep, making of weapons.
Light.
Light. Back there? Okay. I'm bleeding! Torch, what do I do? Take a guess. I've got a spurting wound, I've got a torch. What do you think I'm going for? No. Because I got a torch. Alright?
Cauterization.
Yeah. I go and I cook my own meat of an arm, but that seals the wound and it cleanses it from certain kinds of problems. So we use it as medicine as well. Yes?
I don't know, but can you kind of hunt animals?
Yeah, because you can use it as WMD to drive them off a cliff. Yeah, so fire is the great high-tech substance that we master, at least its use. I say master, because like anything like this, mastery is a relative term. Otherwise, we wouldn't need a fire department. Because there are still cases every week, every month, where buildings catch on fire. And there are still, unfortunately, people who die of fire every year. Every community I know of. So fire is something that we master, but only to a point. Still, it gives us a human lifestyle. What is that lifestyle? We are nomadic hunter-gatherers. Nomadic. We travel on a route Now, usually nomads travel on routes that are 3 or 4 or 5 years in the making. So you don't go back to the same spring camp every year. You go to the same spring camp once every 3, 4, or 5 years, maybe longer. And depending upon the range of territory you have and how crowded things are. Why do we travel? Well, that has to do with the jobs that we have. And there are 2 jobs, and only 2 jobs. And the woke among you are going to love this, but it's the truth. Hunters and gatherers. Who hunts? Actually, ask you. Who hunts in Paleolithic times? What group of people do the hunting?
I was gonna say like men.
Men. And who gathers?
Like there's a prey.
Who gathers?
Other ones.
There's hunting and there's gathering. Who gathers? What?
Either men hunt or the women gather.
Men hunt and the women gather. So we have gender determining job. There are 2 jobs, there are 2 genders, that's it. So why do the men hunt? Why do the women gather? Well, Zoe?
Because men are more suited and stronger for being able to do the supplements for hunting, while women are more built to just do gathering.
Well, here's why, and you're basically right from the point of view of mainstream history. I will call on you in a moment. There are certainly women in this world that could rip me limb from limb, but it's a rare woman that can do that. In general terms, men have superior upper body strength. Men also have a psychological disposition to aggression that most women don't tend to have. If you doubt this, look at children at play. I'm talking about children before culture has had a chance to get their hooks in. You get 5, 6, 7-year-old kids. Boys are playing cowboys and Indians, cops and robbers. They're seeing who's running the fastest, who's jumping the highest, who can take the biggest punch, or who can wrestle each other to the ground. Girls have tea parties. They have these adventures. They have these things. And I've seen this myself. And you be honest with yourself. If you've ever been spent a lot of time around younger relatives or neighbors as a babysitter or whatever, you will tend to see this division. Females tend to be much more relational than males at that age. And that tends to continue through life. Again, there are always exceptions. These are general rules, but they apply to most people in most ages of society.
What I was gonna say is one of the reasons why the women stay behind over going hunting is because women, even then, they are still seen as species of value because they could give children. So therefore, they did not want to put them in harm's way by sending them out by dangerous animals, keep them behind to gather, to keep them safer because they would still be near their village, they'd still be near their home, and they would be dealing with dangerous animals that could very easily kill them.
Totally right. That is absolutely correct. We men are biologically suited to be the defenders and protectors. We are mostly psychologically suited as well. Why? Well, the basic rule is this. A man, in order to give birth to a baby, needs to be there for a few happy moments during sex. It is better for the man, I think in almost every case, to be there while the woman is pregnant, to be there during the years of nursing, to be there to protect the family as the child grows up. And there are exceptions, but in general terms, I think that's good. The woman needs to be there for the 9 months of gestation until birth, and it would be wise for her to be there for the time when she is nursing the child. So a woman needs to be there in order to have a successful next generation. At the very least, 9 months. She's increasingly vulnerable during that time, and then for a few years of nursing. If somebody's got to die, it's going to be the guy. We are expendable in a way that the women are not. This is why universally in most societies, women and children, certainly in the West, women and children first if there's a disaster. Sometimes this can be taken to ridiculous extremes. If you ever study the Titanic disaster, you will see how women and children first becomes truly a pain in the neck, and it costs lives. But in general terms, the idea is this comes from very ancient times. Protect the women, keep them safe. So the men range out from the camp. The women are the camp. The men go out, and we're talking men of pubescent age and older, and they explore. They look for threats and they look for opportunities. If they find threats, they try to deal with them, or they get the camp the heck out of the harm's way. If there are opportunities, they try to hunt those opportunities and bring the goodies back to camp. Men tend to be more taciturn and quiet. Again, always exceptions. But classically, if a man experiences pain, he's not supposed to go, ah, it hurts! Classically, a man is supposed to be stoic as he faces pain and brave as he faces danger. Up until very recent times, being called a coward, being thought of as a coward, was worse than death for most men. This is true in the United States as well, at least through the period of World War I and World War II. If you want to have a fight with somebody, call them a coward, and they'll prove then and there that they're not. More than that, why do you think so many men ended up dying in war? It's not because they wanted to. It's because they felt the need to be brave in protection of those things that they value more than life itself. Yes?
I was going to answer the question because I thought you were asking.
Oh,
the
please.
question.
I'm sorry, I do rhetorical. Can you answer that in your own words? I'd be interested in hearing other words.
I was going to say that, like, men from, like, every age wanted to prove to their parents, to themselves, to, like, other people around them, that they are not cowards, that they were strong and ready to go to war, even die for their country, no matter what, at what costs.
Indeed. And that is some of the glue that holds society together. Now, does that mean women are wimps? Hell no. Everyone knows, if they think about it, that women have a higher pain threshold than men. And that means that women can endure more agony than the average woman can endure more agony than the average man. Women tend to be much more interested in the social aspects of life, in who likes who doesn't like who, little dramas that go on. Why? Because in the ancient Paleolithic, men tended to be isolated, and when you're moving through the wilderness hunting game and looking for other men that might be threats, you don't want to chatter too much because you'll give your position away. Whereas in order to make the gathering work, the women of the tribe were always together. And that meant that they were almost always talking with one another, telling stories, telling jokes, helping each other out. If a woman didn't get along with the others, she was going to be in serious trouble because she'd be ostracized, cast out. And this bond between the women helped them to be locust-like in stripping a field of any valuable roots or grubs or anything like that. So when women got through with an area, there was nothing worth having left. Every bit of bark, every little creature was either gone or had been taken in for food. The children tended to be raised by mom, but also by the other women of the tribe. The tribe centered on the women, but also included maybe an old person or two, and whatever children happened to be there. This pattern is also the pattern among many other mammals. For example, killer whales. Healthy killer whale pattern has young male killer whale growing up with the pod, mostly the women, and their husbands who've come in. And then the male killer whale goes bye-bye and goes off and finds his own pod. Now, if he goes off and finds another pod of females, he probably will be accepted in, and he'll be a male in that pod. There are, however, rogues that I've told you about that never find a pod of women, and they sort of find other males, and they become like cannibalistic street gangs. These guys develop different whale song than the others, And not only do they hunt seals, which is primarily what killer whales eat, they hunt other whales, and they particularly hunt other killer whales. They become the evil within the society. But it's the males who lead. Yes.
I was just gonna say that in the lion, lion, there's like the exact opposite of what most do with women are not the hunters. They're the
You're exactly right. And by no means is this male-female separation a universal thing. It is common among mammals, but you're right. However, what the males do is the males do tend to leave their homes and find females. The females hunt. What's the male's job then if the females hunt? Do any of you know the job of a male lion? Because he's got one, and he wouldn't be fed by the females if he didn't. Okay, I was looking for somebody else, but yes,
Me?
you guys are so good. I
Me?
appreciate it. Thank you.
Me or someone behind me?
What?
Me or
There's
someone
someone
behind
You.
behind
Just me?
Jess.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Is it to protect the area that they live
Yeah. Protect from what?
from other lions? But yeah.
Primarily. Do you have anything to add?
Um,
Yes.
Will you send Natal Davis to the high school office? She should bring her things. Thank you.
Was that you? Okay. I'm still learning.
so
Farewell. Have a good day.
So what the male lions are supposed to do is they're supposed to find a harem where they live.
Mhm.
Their main goal is to breed with the females. The females go out hunting. The males are supposed to stay behind protecting other lions from the predators. But they're also there to raise the cubs. They're the ones who raise the cubs. The women aren't. They give birth to the cubs, but the male lions are the ones that raise them.
Indeed. And males are there also. So, did you have something else?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Good luck. Have a good day. Males are there primarily to protect the harem from real dangers to all of them, but also from other male lions. And other male lions will always come along and try to take the harem. And if there is a possibility that the male with the harem is older or weaker,
This doesn't happen very often, but it does happen sometimes. Sometimes genetics would play out weirdly, and sometimes sometimes lionesses are born and they look like males. They'll have the mane, they'll have the similar size, and their main reason for that is that it would look like there's two males inside the hair, making it seem more like more strong.
that's interesting.
Whereas there's still only one male, but the female that looks like a male is there to help protect the tribe or the harem because she acts like a male, she hunts like a male, and she also just intimidates other creatures because she's oftentimes
Well, no, and the appearance would do it. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah, she's oftentimes a lot bigger than the male too.
Just for the sake of clarity, there are always exceptions to every rule. We are human beings, and primitive cultures often have a safety valve for this. In Siberian tribes, we're talking Mongols, Tatars, things like that, there is the concept of the will man. And what a will man is a little girl who grows up and at puberty, instead of deciding to live like a female, which most do, she chooses to live like a male. She goes through a ceremony. Now, once that ceremony is done, and it's an ordeal, it's a life and death ordeal, she's going to be treated like a male for the rest of her life. She's not going to be able to have any of the privileges or protections of the female sex. She gets to live like a guy. Now, in reality, she is a small, weak guy compared to most of the other hunters in most cases. But she has that choice. The culture provides that latitude for somebody who doesn't quite fit in with the normal roles. You'll find that most societies, traditional and modern, have these options for people who don't fit in to live the way they feel that they need to live. So no society is a monolith. All societies have some degree of diversity within them, but I'm talking about the mainstream of society because, and in Paleolithic times, there's a very simple society: men, women. That's the division.
In Hawaiian culture and schools, there used to there's actually there's third gender, and I'm not sure what it is called, but they are people who don't fit into the gender of their society, and they're usually shamans, or they usually, instead of going into one role or the other, they choose to go into the religious where they're usually like people pass down stories and like help teach and like raise like children of their like society. I don't know. I just thought it was
Well, no, it's very interesting, and it's also not uncommon. Remember, Hawaiian culture is fairly close to a Paleolithic, Neolithic culture, just a few hundred years away from that. The idea of becoming a shaman, a witch doctor, a priest, or a priestess usually does separate you from the normal gender roles. And that's true in the West, too. Monks and priests and nuns are not supposed to have children. They're not supposed to have sex. They're not supposed to have families. They have taken themselves out of normal society to become holy. And that goes back to some very primitive things. Excellent. Thank you. So, this is the Paleolithic society. The men hunt, the women gather, and it works. It's not ideal, but it works. And one of the ways it's not ideal is there's no food surplus. If a person gets old, they usually do some variant of the ceremony of the Inuit, the Eskimos, who wait for a storm and then either, depending upon the tribe, have a party or just nothing is said at all, and the old people leave, bless you, in the middle of a storm, and they're never seen again. They literally walk to the sea and jump in, and that's it, they're gone. Because every bite they take is out of the mouths of their grandchildren. Unproductive mouths who aren't little kids growing up are not something that the tribe can support, because Paleolithic hunter-gatherers do not have much extra food. Except for that brief time when they can make it rain meat, they can't really feed extra mouths. The Sioux, the Lakota people, and many of the Plains Indians of the middle United States had a similar tradition. They had their camps, their seasonal camps, and if you were injured or if you were very, very old and no longer capable of being basically a person, functioning like a person, they'd feed you while they're in that camp. But when they left the camp, bye-bye. You'd say your goodbyes, they'd be in the grass, you'd go off. They would not put you on a travoy and drag you along unless you were going to recover and you were psychologically prepared to recover. So the old and the lame and the very, very sick, not because they didn't love them. This is the thing. They loved their relatives as much as you love any of yours. They couldn't feed them. And the old and the sick knew it. And they would not be a burden. It was, talk about a matter of pride, talking about guys not wanting to be cowards. These old people did not want to be a burden on their young. So they weren't. So that is the society of all people around the world in the earliest phase of prehistory that is genuinely prehistory. And then something changed. Now, probably it happened gradually. And I don't know if I told you the story of the pumpkins. Did I?
No.
No.
Okay. Tribe. We are back at Camp of Three Waterfalls. What memories. I remember last time we were here, Throd Grok and I stood, and we had these weird orange fruit, and we broke them open and filled our mouths with seeds, and then we had seed spitting contest right over there. My, look right over there. Orange fruit all over the place. Could it be that orange fruit comes from spitting? Eventually, somebody figured out that those little nutty things that we call seeds are the source of plants. So what likely occurred is that as the tribes moved around their various circuits of camps, they would find good plants and find seeds for them and plant them and leave them behind and hope that when they returned here, they would have more and more and more beneficial plants that would be easy to find. But if you've ever gardened or farmed, you know that leaving plants wild is a risk. Weeds, bugs, plant disease, frost, whatever. And last night we had a hard frost for the first time this year, at least where I am. So somebody, somewhere around 10 or 12,000 years ago, in the Middle East is where we think this first happened, said, clan, family, we need not follow the herds. We need not strip the area clean of anything valuable like the women do, so that nothing useful can be found here for a few years. We can take the discovery of plant seeds and look at this beautiful, huge field. We can clear it of weeds. We can plant each seed so there's space around it for it to grow. We can learn to bring the right amount of water regularly to each plant. When we get up in the morning, we don't move around. We work in the field, protecting the little plants from weeds, protecting the little plants from whatever we can protect them from. If we plant this field, we'll have more food than we've ever had before. What guts! What incredible courage! What recklessness!
I feel like this kind of goes along with the topic. An old friend of mine, her name was Emerson, and she collected plants. It's as simple as that. If you went to her house and you went into her room, she had about maybe 50 different succulents within her room alone. She even had a
The air must have been very fresh, but humid.
she had nursing shelves that she could propagate new plants, and her entire shed was just full of plants. And her parents just let her keep buying plants every single time she went out. However, I noticed something. Is the fact that because of the plant she grew succulents, but a lot of the succulents that she grew were edible. Therefore, when she grew them, she would often like make salads from them and whatnot because she had so many plants and they were constantly like reproducing. Where she was running out of space then, so she would turn them into food for people around her and whatnot.
Was it good?
For me personally, I don't really like melon type things or cucumber like things. The only thing she made that I really liked was she turned cactuses into like cherry tarts in a sense, and they were pretty good.
One of the best Mexican foods I ever had. Something that?
Prickly pears. I stirred up that.
Yeah.
Nabalitos, which is a cactus salad. It's just delicious, incredible. Little cilantro, little cactus, but
Yeah, it is quite good.
incredible stuff. Why is it? Yes.
Sorry. But the finding that seeds are the source of plants, is that part of the...
Yes. This is the Neolithic Revolution. We're getting there. I'm just sort of lurching into it. The discovery that plants come from seeds, that seeds lead to plants, is the theoretical breakthrough that leads to the Neolithic Revolution. The reason it's gutsy to be a farmer is you are completely dependent on that field. Now, yeah, the farmer guys will go out and they'll do hunting from time to time. The women will grow gardens of vegetables in addition to the fields of grain. There's still other things that are going on. But the primary focus of the entire community is the grain fields. They're in the open. Vermin. Little bugs. Mice. Rats. Plant diseases. Blights. Too hot. Too cold. Too wet. Too dry. Other people coming in. Give us what we want, and we'll go away. The farmer is walking around holding razors inviting the world to slash his wrists because anything can happen to that field. That field is completely vulnerable. I used to, as a creative thought experiment, give my students a chance to come up with ways of protecting a farm field. And some of the answers was you build a dome and you make sure that everything inside the dome is climate controlled. And I said, yeah, but they don't have the technology to build a glass dome. And if it's glass, it's going to break anyway. Even just by the weather, glass shatters if it's too hot or too cold and the temperature changes. So what are you going to have, a giant copper dome over your field? There's a slight problem with that. What's the problem?
Sunlight.
Yeah, you kind of need light. So they're really, aside from building hydroponic farms, isn't a way to protect your crops, except by trying your best and hoping and praying. But still, this is the Neolithic Revolution. And here is the chain of domestication. The word domestication means to bring things under human control. We start out with what I just told you about. The domestication of plants. Nuts and seeds grow plants. Shoots can as well. So what you do is you learn how to make little plants from old plants, and you make sure that you are able to plant. And you plant a winter crop of certain strains that you think can survive whatever local winter conditions you have, and you plant a summer crop. And hopefully you have irrigation. Now here is a word that, for whatever reason, I didn't write in my notes today, but it's a word you've got to know. I-R-R-I-G-A-T-I-O-N. Irrigation. And I will give you my definition for that ahora, inmediatamente. Irrigation. Getting a system of ditches. A system of ditches that gets the right amount of water consistently to each plant in a field. A system of ditches that gets the right amount of water consistently to each plant. A system of ditches that gets the right amount of water consistently to each plant. That is irrigation. So, domesticating plants involves learning what seeds are good for, and learning how to plant them. And what we develop is a system of planting seeds in rows on little mounds. And between the little mounds are trenches, little trenches. And either with a system of an artificial dam that you let loose from time to time, or you've got a bucket on a stick that you dip in the water and then push it over here and sploosh, it goes into your ditch system. You come up with some way of getting water into the ditches. And you have the elevation of your fields ideally sloping in such a way that the water slowly moves across the fields, so that every plant gets the right amount of water consistently. Now you're going to have wetter areas of your fields and you plant crops that need more water there. And you're going to have drier areas and you plant the crops that are most able to handle arid conditions there. If you're on a hillside, your trenches do not go up and down hill because the water will just cause erosion. You have your trenches go down to catch the water. So that is irrigation, and that's a key to the domestication of plants. It allows people to grow a consistent, reliable food supply. And with irrigation, we get our first food surplus. And a food surplus is something that, again, only the insect commies have. They, ants and bees, and other creatures like them, will stockpile food for a rainy day. Human beings, up until this point, pretty much were hand to mouth. You get something, you eat it. You get something, you eat it. Don't have much ability to store food. But now, you have a surplus of grains and vegetables. With this surplus of grains and vegetables, you can begin doing things that you've never done before. With this extra food, first off, the old don't necessarily have to die right away. The old can be kept. So grandma and grandpa don't have to go walking in the storm and never come back again. They can stick around. We can feed them. We've got a food surplus of grains and vegetables. We can also feed other people, which we'll begin to talk about. But do you know what else we can feed? What else can we feed besides people?
Our animal.
I was gonna say our animal.
So this is when we bring in cows, horses, sheep, pigs, goats, chickens, turkeys, the domestic animals that are plant eaters. We bring them in under our control with our psychological understanding and affinity for these animals. We help breed out aggression, and we breed in a domestically subservient attitude that allows us to work with them, that allows them to be among us. And once we have them, what kind of new food surplus do we have? Yes?
Eat.
Meat and dairy. With the food surplus of meat and dairy, we're talking milk, eggs, what you can make from milk and eggs, as well as the flesh of animals. We now have the ability not only to make leather goods, but we have the ability to have a reliable source of meat. Now, back in the day, most of people's diet was bread or grain of some kind. That was a staple food. You ate bread with every meal. You filled up on bread. But you'd have a few vegetables and a few bits of meat if you were lucky. Or maybe broth made from meat. And this gave farmers a reasonably decent diet. It was a different diet than our nomadic hunter-gatherer ancestors had, though. We have bread, we have rice, we have potatoes, or the early variants of starchy grains, taking more and more of a person's diet, comprising more and more of a person's diet. But it's reliable. Now, with a surplus of meat and dairy, what other animals can we bring in under our control? We have the herbivores already. Zoe?
Carnivores, specifically like, early versions of the dog, which was kind of close to a wolf at the time.
Yep.
And early versions of the cat, which I would assume were close to things like lynxes.
That's right. And, or servals. And what you do is you learn how to take the young. And you raise the young as your own, and they bond on you as a parent. So your cats and dogs view you as a member of the pack.
And now your dog can like hunt with you and protect you from other animals.
Absolutely. And dogs and cats give us abilities that nothing else gives. Dogs are the best watchers that we have. They can smell and hear better than we can, and they're always on the alert. Unless they're so domesticated, they're, modern lap dog. But generally, dogs know when something unusual is going on, and they'll start barking. Dogs will also be useful in hunting. They're very useful in bird hunting. So if you find a way to bring down a bird, the dog will go out and get the bird for you. Come back. Dogs can also be used to drive game. And when you're starving to death, driving game is not a problem. Today it's illegal. But if you have a bunch of dogs and some guys with dogs going this way through the forest, and you set up some hunting blinds here, the animals as they come by are going to be easy targets, and you'll get a lot of meat. What are cats good for?
Well, they have really good eyesight.
Yeah,
Well, if mice and everything get into the fields, the cats can go out and
exactly. Human beings are not good mousers. Dogs can hunt mice. They're okay at it, depending. I mean, dachshunds are built as rat dogs. That's what they're... Why do they have the little long hot dog bodies they have? Because we sent them into holes to kill rats, and they got really good at it.
You're forgetting about my dog, Yorkie. She's made for hunting mice.
Yeah. But in general terms, cats are your mousers. And I remember when Tina and I were new marrieds, we were living on a horse farm. And one of the things that we loved was the spring, because that was the season of pups and kittens and other baby animals. And there was this pile of sawdust that the farmer had near his barn. I think it was sawdust, maybe it was grain. In any event, it was this open pile, and the mom cat and her kittens would be there, and the mom dog and her puppies would be in another part, and it was just very, very cozy and very, very nice, very, very warm. So, with the domestication of plants comes a food surplus of plants, which allows us to domesticate animals, which allows us to have a food surplus of meats and dairy, which allows us to bring the last animals under our control. Do you have a question?
Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Harry.
I just kind of have like talking about like dogs and how they're like doing right.
Yep.
I have like a mix, and beagles are like the way they're bred is they're like white ends of their tails, so that when they're hunting, see them.
Oh, that's cool. I never knew that. That's very interesting. I also am not escaping the fact of what your last name is and that you chose to have a beagle mix. That's cool. That's funny. Yes.
So I still don't quite understand how because the film you showed us about the wolves and everything, basically to attack the men, and when men finally created grain and everything like that, how did wolves turn into dogs?
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
If she has something to say, I'll let her answer and then I'll answer.
Okay, so I watched this video about this, but when we were like, obviously we had like our camps and stuff, and after we were done eating like scraps around camp and stuff, so wolves would like naturally gravitate toward those scraps, and eventually, like as they got went to the camps more and more, eventually they started like becoming a symbiotic relationship. So he would eat the scraps for them, and then the wolves would come around the camp more and like eat away like other predators. And then eventually use them.
That is the beginning of it. That happened during Paleolithic. Neolithic, though, is I think when it really occurred. And again, when you have meat animals of your own and dairy animals of your own, then you can reliably feed. And what we were most interested in, we wanted a wolf's intelligence, but we did not want a wolf's independence. And so dogs were bred to be focused on us rather than on themselves. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. She was.
She can go first.
Okay.
Fine.
Just one thing I find interesting about specifically the domestication of cats, one of the only efficient ways we can domesticate them is through a set routine, and it's very similar to humans because if you think about it, without a routine we go to a more primitive state where we're not entirely aware of the world around us, but we focus on a simple thing in our mind, and we have to keep our mind set on it if only to pass the time.
Now, by routine, can you give an example?
For example, we teach them to do things at specific times, specific ways, and in specific manners, and through the repetition of that routine, we thereby domesticate them. It's very similar to
And cats like that routine. I can tell you. My wife and I follow a pretty stable routine. You know, we're a settled married couple. And we've had friends who, especially as younger adults, were much more dynamic. They basically did things spontaneously all over the place. And their pets weren't nearly as comfortable because who knows what's going to happen next. The predictability of the routine makes the animal more comfortable. Yes?
So with the idea of cats, my cat Pistachio, her main routine, because we adopted her, she got a new routine from her foster home. When we adopted her, we gave her a new routine, like there are certain times she could be outside the garage during the day, there are certain times we could show her people, stuff like that. But also, with what she was saying about her beagle having a white spot on its tail in order to make it easier to see, I happen to have an American Leopard Hound, and because my kind of dog, he's not like the regular Leopard Hounds where they're normally gray with dark and gray spots. He's a black and brown one, so he's a brindle one. However, because of his color markings on his chest, he has just one white spot, because that's when he's like, if you were being hunting and he's like the shadow of trees, when he's sitting up, you can see that one white spot because he is able to sit up confidently, like, and not be seen.
Mm-hmm.
But that one white spot tells you where he is.
The subtleties of breeding amaze me. You know, lionesses and lions, they tend to have little dark spots on patches on the tips of their ears to help them recognize each other in the tall grass when they're hunting. That's just interesting. Thank you.
So my cat has this routine where, like, every morning, like, I'll do it before 6 a.m., he'll get out of bed and start scratching at, like, my closet door. And it has, like, kind of a rough wood sort of thing, so we'll scratch at it. And, like, he made this routine up after we moved. It's like, this is what he's going to do every morning. And I'm not a big fan of that one.
Yeah,
I, like,
you may want to
like,
put something on the door, like tape
I
or
started
something.
doing that,
Yeah.
And, like, but, like, I normally get out of bed, like, 20 minutes before I have to leave. And I'm like, Angel, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm just having fun over here.
Yeah, that's right. Cats, yeah, dogs. And little kids all love getting up early in the morning on those days that you want to sleep.
Especially Christmas.
Okay. Well, Christmas is it's
Yeah,
totally
everyone
does
does
that.
that.
All rules are off that. We used to give gifts on the Christmas Eve rather than Christmas morning. At least some of them to alleviate a little of that. Well, we didn't have kids. I'm talking about when I was a kid. Anyway, so who can now be fed? Well, now that we have extra food, not only can we domesticate animals, not only can we care for the old. The wise person, we're going to make that person into a priest or a judge or a king. The strong person, we're going to make that person into a soldier, a protector. The crafty persons, we're going to make them into craftsmen. And we develop with the agricultural revolution, which is what this is. The Neolithic Revolution is the agricultural revolution. It's the development of farming and the farming lifestyle. With that, we develop the ability to have specialized labor. And from this point of the agricultural revolution, you only, this is going to seem weird to us, you only need from 70% to about 95% of the population being food producers. Up until this point, during the Neolithic, or Paleolithic, everyone had to be a food producer. Every man hunter, every woman a gatherer, that was it. But now, depending upon the sophistication of the farming, you can have 5% of your people do other jobs. You could have up to 30% of your people. This is Napoleonic times, or late 17, early 1800s. You can have up to 30% of your people be city dwellers, be carpenters and tinsmiths and wheelwrights and barrel makers and dyers and glue makers and priests and monks and nuns and warriors and kings. All of these jobs are not food producing. And pretty much from the agricultural revolution about 10,000 years before Christ into the industrial revolution, which happens in the West in the early 1800s, this is the pattern. And I'll be showing you the social order of that pattern in the near future. But there is something that we give up when we give up being nomads. You may have noticed this fellow. This is a sedentary farmer. And his world is a combination of the hyper-local and the universal. This guy is born within a 20-mile radius of where he's going to live his whole life. He's going to live in his town, he's going to get a wife, he's going to have children, he's going to die in that same area. 40, 50-mile diameter, 20, 25-mile radius, just that's his world. And he knows everything in it. Every tree, every fence, every ditch, every lake, every stream, where it's good to go fishing, where it's good to go hunting, who's crazy in what way in the community. He knows the local area. But he doesn't know anything about what's beyond that, because he's never been, and very few people in his world travel into and out of his village. His village is his world, except for the nighttime sky. The nighttime sky is the dome over which, and if you've never been outside of the light-polluted areas of settlements to see a real nighttime sky, you've never seen the sky. You've got to see the Milky Way and its swath across the heavens. You've got to see how deep the heavens look. I, without depth perception, can still perceive directly how deep the heavens are. And you're looking also into the distant past.
There's this place my family and I go camping every year in Eastern Washington. It's about 40, 50 miles away from the nearest city. And you can see the Milky Way. There's meteor showers almost every night. It's incredible.
It's glorious. Where we lived in Maine, we used to be able to get that too. Sir?
During like turkey season, my dad and I will go out to like former Sunset area.
And you get up early to go hunt the turkeys.
Up way early, so we'll be driving out there and we can see the whole sky. And I always look for Orion.
Yeah, Orion's my favorite constellation. And it's obvious, it's recognizable, but I think it's cool. I'm telling you, if you've never done it, try to get your family to do it. It's a great way to spend some time, even if it keeps you up at night or it gets you up early in the morning. But folks, this is where astrology comes from. Just a moment, because of time. This is where astrology comes from. So, there's a set of shooting stars that Farmer Bill here notices. And on the night of the shooting stars, Mabel's cow throws a calf and the calf dies strangled by the intestinal cord. What do you call that? The umbilical cord. Umbilical cord. At the same time, Joe and Mary have a really screaming fight. And Mary wings Joe with a clay pot and causes Joe to get a concussion. So the events on the earth at the local level and the events in the heavens seem directly connected. If you learn the heavens, you can figure out what's going to happen on the earth. And that is astrology. It comes from this hyperlocal universal combination. Thank you. Have a great day. I'll be over if you have questions.
I need to go to, is there an explanation of what was that? There's, I need to
Ladies, I know that one of you is a DJ and one of you is we were both here the other day and I were here yesterday. I'm okay with that, but ask me. Don't just decide that you're going to have to switch it for that. So do you both want to be, what is it, A day or short meeting?
Fine with either.
I'm okay with that. Just ask me. Yes.
I was just making sure I'm going on.
What?
Who goes out there?
I don't remember. Who went out yesterday?
8A went out yesterday.
Okay, so it's a
8
B.
days are free today.
Yeah. So does that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions?
One thing I find very interesting about CrossFit is CrossFit Yoga.
How you doing, Jeff?
Good.
Oh, I've got to stop the machine. Hello, video people. Yes, I kept you going way too long. That's okay. Bye.